at the end. Oh look! Oh look! It's good to know I can influence people like this. Do you think that we are making all of this too complicated? I just got handed this, by the way. If you want a cup of tea, this is the cup of tea you need. It's called Digital Detox. It's out there. So, still a larger percentage, 13 people are lucky for some, think that this is the... changing our minds slowly. So let's go, I'm going to put the next session questions up now. So you can see on session 4, so get those questions now up on your telephones. And I just asked some questions here, 2 questions really, about startups. What is your opinion of startups in the maritime and shipping industry? And there's a number of options there for you to answer. And then just put a question just following our comments about GDPR up there as well, so for you to answer as well. So now I'm going to, we can go back to the main, screen, please. So while you're answering that, you can also listen to the next speakers as we move into this last session looking at the future. So I'm going to invite now Andreas Justinussen to come up. Recently joined, how long ago? DFDS? Year ago. As in charge of their transformation office.
So I work with the DFDS. It's a Ro-Ro operator. I'm sure many of you know them already. So I was asked to give a talk about the journey to digitization. I think it's been said before by Tools, by Mark earlier, that it is not the digitization in itself that is the goal. And I think, from my point of view, what we're trying to achieve is innovation. We're trying to come up with innovative new ideas to improve our business. And I'm very happy to have heard this multiple times before here today. I think a lot of people say it, but I think it's extremely hard to actually do it. There are 3 things I want to talk to you guys about today. First of all is focus on the business. Number 2, you need to enable an innovation culture. And number 3, you need to ensure an end-to-end approach when you create new digital innovations. So first, start with the business. So we recently set up an advanced analytics department. And as part of that, we went around and talked to quite a few other companies in other industries as well, who set up similar departments to learn from what they've done, what their mistakes were. And I think everyone agreed on this. Don't focus on technology, focus on the business. But I think also a lot of them still had problems with moving to that direction. Because it is much easier to focus on, let's implement AI, than to say, what can we actually change fundamentally in our business model today by utilizing some technologies. And also because, for example, AI, self-driving trucks, autonomous vessels and so on, might be much more sexy than some of the other solutions that are needed. So what would my suggestion be, and what did we do? That is, when you start the journey of wanting to improve your business, to create innovation, start with P&L. Quite simple exercise, but start with P&L. Look at your biggest costs and look at biggest revenue. Find the areas that you want to improve. And then next, figure out what kind of tools do you need to improve that. So start with that. It sounds simple, but very much harder than it sounds. As mentioned, adopting newest technology is not the goal in itself. I came by one of my colleagues last week, I believe it was, and stole a slide from him where he was listing some different technologies and saying, what is our current level of adoption? How good are we adopting IoT, AI, chatbots, virtual reality, autonomous vessels, and so on? But I said, why is this important? I don't think it is. I think it's important we stay focused and we open our eyes to the technologies out there, but it's not important that we adopt all these technologies. Lastly, when looking at these digital projects, it's important to realize that it's not troll fishing. It's more like spear fishing. You need to be very focused on what you're trying to solve. Going back to like look at your major cost or revenue drivers and see what are the problems you're trying to solve. When I look at data, for example, many companies try to hire data scientists and say, go find gold somewhere. We have all this data, go figure it out. I think that's a very broad approach and that's believing that some technology is just going to, come out from nowhere and solve your problems. That's not what's going to happen. You need to be extremely focused on what problem it is you're trying to solve. And then not focus on the AI, focus on how do you solve this problem. The AI might be part of it. And that is the innovation culture. I think for larger companies, this is really the key hurdle to overcome. How do you create a culture where you can innovate? We're competing very much against startups, a company who can move very fast, be very agile. And how can we create a culture within a bigger company that can compete against this? I think one part of it is have a very pragmatic approach to what things you're doing. Avoid the perfectionism in your companies. So, and the second one is build things that break. So I think when we run some projects, some of the stumbling blocks has been that we end up in lengthy discussions about what is the right platform to use. And a good example of that is what cloud service should we use? Should we use the Amazon cloud service? Should we use the Microsoft cloud service? That decision does not have a business impact for me right now. That is not for me to test out if a product I'm creating or an innovation I'm testing is going to work or not. So spending too long time on that will actually just hinder you getting to the next step. And secondly, not all of our systems and all the things we create have to be perfect. It's like Tolch said earlier, come with something that you're embarrassed of and show that to the end user. Because you will never be able to make it perfect within a little box that you're working in. So create something, let it break, and don't be too perfect about it. Just try things out and create a culture where people also are able to fail. And lastly, I think it's important, myself coming from a business background, don't leave all the technical decisions to IT. I think many business people have a tendency to come up with a great scheme, great plan, like this is the problem I want to solve. But you technical people, you just make the decision on how this looks like. Again, looking at my a previous project I did, we were talking about how do we extract some data from one of our operational systems. And I think there was, to begin with, generally agreement that we need to create some APIs. However, we didn't have the development resources available right now to create the APIs that we needed. If we wanted to make changes later on, that would be a lengthy process and so on and so on. This would, if we went down that road, would have probably postponed the project a year, maybe 2. So I went into it and looked at myself and said, okay, what are the possible solutions? How can we deal with this? And said, well, can't we just take the database we're having and just copy it straight over? I said, no, that's not a great solution because that means that your solution will break. Anytime we make any changes of the original database, your database will then break or your solution will break down. And I said, okay, and how much does it take to fix that? Try to research that a little bit, and it ends up, and maybe that would take an hour a month. It's like, that's fine. I'm okay with my solution breaking every once in a while. If I had left that decision to the guys I asked this about, the technical, about the IT guys, we would never have gotten started with this. And therefore, I think it's extremely important that the people who run these projects, they are also involved in that part of it. And we need to, as business people, not be afraid of getting our hands dirty. The last one is focusing on an end-to-end approach of what you're creating. Again, I think many times when we start projects, we come up with a great idea and we say, this is what we want to build. And we spend a long time building it. Maybe it's a great prediction of something or an AI algorithm or something else. And we've spent maybe a year on this, and after a year we come to the end user and say, look at this great product we built, and realize they can't use it because we had a basic assumption wrong from the get-go. So you need to you need to consider the full development. You need to consider both the technology, you need to consider the design, and you need to consider the business. All those three elements. And for example, if we look at, well, going very much back to Apple, the iPod, for example, when they created the iPod, it became hugely successful, but there was nothing new in iPad as such. It was a technology that existed already. They just put it together in a different way. They had a better design than the others, I think, and they were better at marketing, and it took off. So, I think the real magic happens somewhere between design, business, and technology. That's not where you need to be. And therefore, it's extremely important, going back to what I said before, to learn each other's language. So that means, for business people, you need to get into what this technical stuff is. Learn to speak the language of what you're actually asking about. Don't, throw something out and go hands off. And same from the other side, from more technical people, you need to learn to understand the business more, to understand what problem you're actually solving. And lastly, very much related to what I started with here in the slide, is your innovations and inventions will only add value if they're adopted by the users. Many times we focus on, we built feature A, B, C, D, E. But how many features we built doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters at the end of the day, what is the benefit we got out of it? And this is more to do with who is using the system, how much are they using the system, and what are they gaining from that. So that's a very important factor to consider when you're doing this. So my three things: focus on the business, enable an innovation culture, and lastly, ensure the end-to-end approach. So that's what I had today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. And if I could ask Patrick. There you are. I thought you'd be sat next to your wife.
Yeah, we'll sit in a cup.
Good afternoon. We have heard now lengthily about how to develop a way to go into digitalization or full digital systems. I just want to show where the industry is today. I started up my company 3 years ago when I started it completely in full digital. Because what do we expect to see here is we are all happily looking forward to receive this bunch of old, inaccurate, analog data on our desk. Most probably just to look at it, to staple it and file it in one of the many folders we have bought for this reason. And then we store it in a cabinet and we'll never look at it. So currently, 1.5 to 2 tons of ship's mail have been sent from ships to offices just in Germany, assuming just half a kilo, which was the medium size or weight of ship's mail which I received. So, and it was really only 20% of this is usable data, and we can't analyze it. We need a lot of manual work to make it machine readable. Most of this communication is not accurate, it's just bad copies. We waste a lot of time with the crews which are preparing those, copying it from a monitor, printing it, stamping it, and it's really hard to find any conclusion on these data. We need a lot of change management to be done in the offices and also on the vessels to change the mind to get the digital data transfer. The solution I have invented, or not invented, I just implemented it, it was full cloud and first cloud solution. So everything we do is in the cloud. All the data we are receiving from the vessels are just directly created in the same location. Looking into the challenging situations and advantages we have with full cloud and digital solutions is, in old companies or established companies, they are suffering from island solutions. Many departments can't even talk to each other in the same language. If you look at operations, accounting, technical, they have all different systems and the data can't be combined and analyzed. So this is now history. We have all the data, we can run analysis on live actually. Looking at the benefits we have, my employees, they can just stay home, bring the kids to the kindergarten. When the kids are sick, they can stay at home. They can work from everywhere. We have access to the data, we can look at it, we can change it, we can share it. When we see receiving data from outside sources, most of them are just Excel, Access, PDF copies of an Excel spreadsheet, which we also need to transfer again back into a digital format. For many of our outside partners, transparency is not in a business model yet. So they just want to keep everything secret because they believe that the data they have is their business benefit. Looking at the audit process, many of flag states, class societies, and other suppliers of certification services are developing or delivering digital certificates in a PDF format, which is not a digital certificate at all, I would say. It's made for humans to read. It's still a PDF. We will need to have the string of data digitally signed and being able to be checked online if this certificate is valid or not. So actually, we need new standards to be implemented in the whole industry. And also, the price for digital certificates is very high. We have seen that the PDF is costing about 400 to 500 euros, which I doubt that the resources used to create such a certificate is really that high. So we can see that many suppliers are using this digitalization process as another factor to increase the business profit. When we see the logbooks on board being still filled by the people manually with a pen and paper, we really suffer from accuracy, and we can't check if it's really the right data entered. We could receive the data directly from the machines and the equipment we are using on board. So the question is how we enable this M2M communication with systems and improved logbooks to just show that we can, or save also work and time for the crews. When I run around and show what we are doing, the reactions are always, oh, that's very good, you're doing the right thing, you're very transparent. But when you are just going a step forward and say, okay, then let's go together, share the data, do an interface, use API, it changes. Because then these guys need to ask their IT guys, and they have doubts, and everybody is then about security and all this kind of stuff. So in the end, we end up with nothing. It feels a little bit like having a CD and everybody else is running around with cassettes. So you can't share what you want. Small offices mostly can't deliver really of what we are looking at. And that's, of course, because they are using mostly Excel and Access and all these office solutions they have. What I can say, the integration of external partners was quite successfully with crew management in our company. So we have the crew integration completely done. The crewing agent is working on our solution. So all the data we have, if it's payroll, if it's flight tickets, everything is visible for the crew. They can see how much money they get at the end of the month. And we have also integrated some business-to-business communication systems already with external partners. When we are looking, for example, into energy efficiency measures or emission control, we are lacking access to machinery like main engines, auxiliary engines. The data is already created to have, let's say, an 80-20 percentage of the data required to see how much emissions we are producing. The makers are not giving them free. They say the ownership of this data belongs to the one who created the machine, not to the owner of the machine. And I believe this needs really to change. We need to have access to the data, it needs to have a standardized interface, and it needs to be shared with the community. So the requirements I can see is we need a strong authority and regulatory body to set these standards, to really go this way forward, to share the data we are producing and collecting already. Transparency has to become a common sense, which I would think will only change with the next generation of owners of these ship management companies and other companies. And we need the standard for interface. We need to share the data directly from the machine with whoever is interested to read them, at least the owner. The next steps I am doing in my company are the sampling inventory process to automate inventory and reduce manual work by about 99%. It's a self-learning algorithm which will see the supplies coming in and the consumption of those. Also, supply chain management, we will use geolocation-based purchase requirements because we know where the vessels are, we know what we need, and we can directly supply or look for supplies in that area. You might say, that should be done already, but I have seen people flying toilet paper from Hamburg to Singapore, just for the sake of good order. And, of course, we want to force our own e-standards to get a bit bigger and to push it a little bit more into the market, to have a little bit more bigger footprint on this. And also that we have augmented reality implemented in the next 12 to 24 months into our company, at least for safe sailing, safety of navigation. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Just got one more presentation before the session. So, should I ask Pierre now? Pierre's from Maritime Data Systems, Chief Technology Officer. And there you are.
Okay, great. It's amazing to be the last speaker because I get to wrap up the day, so hopefully we're going to gather up a lot of the ideas that were said already into a few bullet points that you can take home with you. But just to see if you guys are still awake, so how many startups are in the room, just so that I get a feeling of who's a startup. Okay, so does that mean everybody else is corporate? How many corporates? Yes. Okay, so what I'm hoping to do is give you guys things you can take away with you on the corporate side that you can implement starting tomorrow into your respective offices. And for the startups, maybe a little bit of a reminder of how good practices are supposed to work. So, just to give you a little bit of background, so my name is Pierre, I'm the CTO co-founder of SeaRoute, which is a startup that's based in Hamburg. We do logistics routing from door to door, so on the sea and on land. Before this, I built 2 startups for the Auto Group within an incubator, and before this I was part of the corporate world for Citigroup and Deutsche Bank. And before that I was doing Agile, the research department at a university. So what's the problem with corporates? Well, traditionally corporates are slow to innovate. Yeah?
You don't want to stand behind the microphone.
Yeah, this is better. Can you hear me better? Yeah, much better. Okay, so what's the issue with corporates? It's usually they're slow to innovate and they do this at tremendous costs. That's the issue. So that's kind of the problems I'm trying to solve right now. And this is why startups are liked, and there's so much buzz and so much enthusiasm behind this. We've heard a lot about digitalization the whole day, about agile. To me it sounds a little bit like teenage sex. Everybody talks about it, everybody knows about it, but no one really knows how to do it. So what I'm hoping to do is give you the how does that work? What's a startup? So I see the picture behind that slide, didn't go through, but so basically a startup is a group of people, whatever it is, an institution, it's a group of people that are together to create new products and do this under extreme uncertainty. When the startup starts, they don't know what product they're going to end up with at the end. And that's the big difference with businesses. This definition is taken from that book from Eric Ries, The Lean Startup, really warmly recommend for anybody. Applies also to big corporates. So typically people like GE, General Electric, have implemented this and they've put it as part of their corporate culture. So there are startups within corporates as well. So what I'll do is I'll give you 3 things to take home with you, 3 things that work with startups and that you can start implementing tomorrow. So why are startups working? Why does innovation work within the startup world? The first thing is they fail fast and they learn. So the enemy of innovation is the business plan. I wonder how many of you have made a business plan before this magic 5-year business plan, an Excel spreadsheet full of numbers. You're confident you're going to have that many customers by the end of the year, you're going to generate that much revenue. That's the enemy of innovation because you don't know today what 5 years from now will happen. So startups don't operate on that model at all. What they do is they start with a hypothesis. That's the starting point. And they're going to build something and measure it against their customers. So it's something that we saw on the presentation at 12 earlier. The idea that you build a skateboard and then you go see your customer and you figure out, is that skateboard good for you? Yeah, well, let me build you a bicycle. Let me build you a car. Let me build you a convertible. So you move on with your customers, you get feedback, you measure that, you validate your assumptions or invalidate your assumptions, and you continue building. You do this in really, really short cycles. That way, you ensure that you're going to build a product that fits what your customer wants. So completely different than the actual 5-year business plan. The second thing that you need to do to create that innovation is eliminate the hierarchy. It sounds like a given. How many of you know about the Scrum team? A few people. So the idea is you put everybody around the table and you discuss things and you make sure that everyone has a say into the problem. So the product owner here is responsible for bringing the problem. And then in the team, there are people that test. There's UX, UI designers that make sure that the product is well designed. The development team also makes decisions on how to solve the problem. And you have a Scrum Master that's in there to make sure that everything is really smooth. So take this and compare it to the typical N+3 hierarchy where you need to go get the approvals of your boss and your boss's boss before you make any decisions. Or you need to go see the IT department to figure out what technology you should use, and so forth. So innovation is done with flat hierarchy, with everyone around the table and all the ideas together. And sometimes the developers actually come up with the best ideas. You don't know this in advance. So number 2 is flat hierarchy. Number 3 of why startups work well or do what they do well is invest in the team. You may have heard about Scrum and sprints, so the idea that you develop things in really short cycles. The idea behind sprints is not to develop things fast and iterate. Yes, it is. But it's also that at the end of your iteration, you get everybody around the table and you learn from what has gone wrong. So typically here, you get a sprint review, a team retrospective, and an overall retrospective where you get everybody around the table, figure out what has not worked on this iteration, and you do this so often that the team knows how to work together, so that if you pivot, change the business idea, change the technology, then the team knows how to do this, and they do this really fast. So, 3 things that startups do pretty well. Fail fast and learn. That's the first thing. No hierarchy. You want things flat, everybody around the table. And the last thing is invest in your team. Make sure they know how to work together, build around your team. So any model of collaboration between startups and corporates has to make sure this environment always remains. So what model works? In my opinion, there's at least 4 models between startups and corporates. The 2 at the tops, the merger and the partners, don't necessarily work. The 2 at the bottom, in-house and organic, I'll go through that, work better. So the first one, the merger, is company wants to innovate, company has a lot of money, company buys a startup. Therefore, they've innovated. But it's only the beginning of the problem, because they're going to have to integrate the startup with their system, they're going to have to preserve this innovation culture, they're going to put a hierarchy on top of that, they're going to have budget on top of it. That's not going to work. These 3 things we just saw are actually going to break. The only thing that will remain is the team, but they might all leave the firm at some point. And this has happened at Auto before. Partners. So, okay, startups gets an investor, becomes a shareholder, so now we're 50-50. Shareholder wants revenue at the end of the quarter, and shareholder doesn't necessarily know what a startup is. All they want is customer, and they also want their product ID to be trickled down to the team. So the fail fast and learn won't work because there's revenue targets, and the team-centric won't work either because the shareholder will say, well, just add this guy to the team, or we need to cut costs, you guys need to fire two employees. So that's a model that won't work. In-house. So in-house is something that has seen, you guys hear about accelerators here and there. There's CMA, CGM that started an incubator called The Box. We heard about Maersk that now has an incubator that's been set up. Everybody has an incubator. Deutsche Bank has an incubator. Commerzbank, it's one of those things that work really well. What's the idea behind the incubator is preserve that startup culture, these 1, 2, 3 that I just talked about, and try to isolate it physically outside the office of the mother company, and try to give it only a simple link between the actual corporate. So the startup is by itself, it has its own culture, it can innovate really fast, it benefits from the branding of the corporate, it benefits from HR, benefits from legal. So that's a setup that works really well, especially since funding is behind it. The best setup is organic, so that is, the startup is by itself, solely independent. But the problem with organic is that you need to find customers. And to scale, that's going to be really difficult if there's no funding. At some point, you're going to run out of friends and family. So, just to summarize and to hopefully have given you 3 things to go home with. If you want to create innovation, if you want to digitalize in your respective corporates or startups, you need to have these 3 things in your culture. This fail fast and learn, this no hierarchy philosophy, and the focus on the teams. So those are the 3 things that will hopefully help out. So thanks, yeah, that's all I got for you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. You can stand there. You might need to. Could I ask Jan and Patrick and Andreas to come forward, please? Last session, last thoughts. So, you want to join us at the front? So, Angus, Isle of Man Registry. We've had a lot of talk about e-certificates. And I know the Isle of Man Registry is quite pro e-certificates. Do you want to use that microphone there?
I'm okay with this one, I think. So
yeah.
People can
So what is, I was talking to Michael Bowden just before he left, and I know there's a lot of work going on within e-certificates, even within CIRM and within the IALA as well. And one of the comments we had earlier was about, yes, it's okay if the Isle of Man is accepting e-certificates, or Singapore accepts e-certificates, but if the other flag authorities don't. So how are we going to see the evolution of e-certificates, and with that whole e-maritime, e-navigation concept as well, from the perspective of the Isle of Man?
Okay, I can talk about how the Isle of Man deals with it, but that emanates very much from how the IMO deals with it. The IMO brought out a document, revision 2 of a document last year, FAL 5, number 39, in which it talked about how e-certificates need to be produced, what they need to contain. And this is a 3-page document, it is not particularly complicated. There was comment, I think it was from Oksana earlier, basically expressing some concerns about how e-certificates were accepted within the industry. At the moment we have 2 class societies who come to us to say we want to issue these e-certificates in this format, is this acceptable? And that was DNVGL and Class MK. And we're very happy with the format. We said, yeah, it's absolutely fine, it complies with this very simple set of requirements. And so we uploaded those certificates onto the IMO's website, which is called GISIS. GISIS is available to basically the whole marine industry, in that port state control officers can have a look on GISIS and see if this kind of certificate is acceptable. It needs a unique identification number, it needs certain details of formatting in it, but basically that's all you need, it's perfectly acceptable. Ships have been issued with e-certificates by DNVGL, by Class MK on our behalf. Another class society has come to us to say, can we do it? And we said, yes, of course, and please do, we like the concept very much. And for the best part of a year now, we've had ships going around with these certificates, and it hasn't been a problem. So when Oksana expressed a concern, saying, it's accepted by the Isle of Man, it's accepted by these and these and these, well, as far as I understand, the industry is willing to genuine. Port state control doesn't have a problem with it. It is rapidly becoming a universal concept and clearly a very good idea. So we're keen to see more of it. It is very much the beginning of statutory certificates being e-certificates. Class certificates obviously must go the same way. Mention was made earlier of CSRs. Can these be electronic? I am totally on the side of that idea. How many people really like CSRs in the room? Are they your favourite document? Or do you agree that they're the most useless document on board the ship? So looking for a little more feedback from that, they are the most useless document on board the ship. Basically, if you get a nice thick stack of them, you can throw them at the pirates. This is about the maximum purpose of these things. So we'd like to see these electronic. Engine room logbooks, electronic, not a problem. We have a number of ship owners come to us to say, can we do this? This is the format. We have a look at it, and we're very happy with that. Please go ahead with that. Deck logbooks, we're also keen on the idea. We're seeing very little of that. I think that's more of a problem for the industry, certainly more a problem for force and control. So, yeah, we're really keen. We're pushing hard for it. And we're not seeing a lot of resistance in any part of the industry to that.
But also, Patrick, when you were talking, you were alluding to some clients that they're on board, but it's got to be a two-way conversation here as well. Do you find when you've got clients that don't have that level of digital solutions, e-certificates and that it becomes a burden for you taking certificates or documents as a PDF and you go, I can't directly just use this, I can't integrate that, it's not a standard, I can't just integrate it into what I want to offer.
Yeah, correct. Because I would need to translate it for the I would need to translate it again for the machine because it's made for human reading. A PDF is just containing the information in the format which a human can read. But I will need them to take this particular data and feed my system with that. So yeah, it's a bit of a burden.
Yeah.
I would believe there's again a taking of the concept, because before issuing such certificates, one should think about certain common standards, worldwide standards, which everybody can use. That will certainly help to develop the idea. But
I think this is what is happening, and that's what you're alluding to as well, this evolution to there will be standards, so you don't end up with a range of different solutions that different organisations may use. But do you think it's going to take time? Or are some flag states, are some ship operators, are some port state control authorities, are they still so ingrained in how they do things and they see this as dare I say it, some countries may see it as a way of as a revenue for them to stay as they are?
I doubt it. The industry, the world is going digital, and it's an opportunity, as many speakers have said, to improve procedures, and improve methods of doing the whole supply chain. So, no, I think everybody has to go for this. There will always be a few ports, and we can all name a few countries who are keen to maintain old-fashioned ways of doing these things because it's a small private finance stream, should we say.
Yeah.
So, no, that's not good news. But with the backing of the whole industry, I'm thinking that this will rapidly become less and less of a problem. As I said, with a large number of ships going around with e-certificates right now. Now, I take Patrick's point in that e-certificates are not in all cases machine readable. We as regulators, as a flag state, are required to see that statutory conventions are complied with. And to a certain extent, we have to step back from that and say to the class societies, and certainly say to the ship operators, if you want that certificate in a certain format, such that you can feed it into your systems and have the dates nicely created into your database automatically, I'm 100% behind the idea, then this is a conversation which I think in the first instance you have to have with the class societies and see what can be created, and I expect you've kind of already done that.
Sure, but you have to buy a product from the class which is feeding that then to you, because they have also a product which is selling or which is producing this data for you. Most of them have some kind of software suite where you just can take it out. I mean, most of the things today we have to download from the internet, or you buy in some software from the class society where it's being fed to you. So it's still kind of a business model for everybody to provide you the data which is already owned by the ship.
So the class society is making you pay for the data that you already have your own?
You mentioned a figure of 400 to 500 euros.
Yes. So if you change, for example, if you change a specific certificate and the reissuance of this will be charged with 450 or 500 euros. which is just a PDF. I can't believe that resources used to create this are so high. So it's a business case for most of them.
Do you encounter the same sort of issues, Jan, in Bernard Schulte?
Yeah, sure, but I must admit we are not that far advanced in this direction. But again, it's all about interfaces and standards in the end, and that is where we have to develop ourselves further.
Is it a case though, I mean, PA, you were talking about the agility. You know, you're demonstrating that you have a business plan, even, may be the nemesis of agility. You know, getting too stuck in the rut. And we have the IMO, which has a tradition, or rather an image. I don't know whether it's necessarily true or not, because I've been watching events in the IMO over the years. But it has a tradition of, it has to have a status within, or status quo within. It has to bring the majority of the flag authorities, the member states, by collaboration effectively, down a sort of regulatory route. So to see, and I'm not suggesting that you know what's going on at the IMO, but when you hear Angus talk about sort of what the flag states are actually, what the regulators are developing when it comes to sort of digital solutions, are you encouraged by that to think, well, here's a sort of an organisation, a UN agency, effectively, taking part in this discussion, really engaging in this discussion, talking about digital solutions. They've got an e-maritime drive, they've got an e-navigation drive. Does that reassure you that, you know, okay, maybe we're not going to see all the ship owners and the big conglomerates start to throw their business plans out of the window, but they will take more than just a passing glance at something to do with agility?
Yeah, I mean, so I come from the very naive side of things, but so first of all, yes, it's super optimistic that there are initiatives in that direction. That's a no-brainer. But if I was IMO, what I would do is get a port on board, issue a new type of e-certificates, and do some tryouts for some boats, like a few ships, and run an experiment, see what comes out of it, and learn from it. So it's a bit of what I was talking about. Rather than trying to solve a problem, create a new standard for all the ships in the world and all the class societies, and try to solve all problems at once. Just build an experiment, do this small, do it with a port of Rotterdam, a few ships, and learn from it. And then think bigger.
Andreas, within the FDS you have two distinct elements within the FDS. You've got your customer-centric passenger side of the FDS, and then you've got your freight side. And we saw that slide at the start of the day, effectively saying that there isn't really much of a difference in terms of how you B2B, B2C, when it comes to online solutions on the development. There isn't really much difference in how people perceive one from the other when they come to use it. Is that true within the FDS? Do you see the approach towards the passenger being similar to the approach towards freight clients?
How do I answer this? So, I think the passenger part is further developed, but I think that comes also from the requirement from the consumers that are used to having more advanced technologies at hand. Whereas as the freight customers, the B2B, don't yet have the same requirements. And therefore, I think our solutions are not as advanced as they are in the passenger side. Having said that, we are working very hard to improve that, and the way of doing it is exactly what was said before, to see this as the same. Because in the end of the day, you are doing business with people. You are not doing business with a business. There's a person on the other side, and they will come to expect the same as we see in the B2C market.
Do you think then that because the investment in the freight side is a lot higher, or there's a lot more potential sort of financial gains from the freight side, do you see that is a driver to actually push forward? With the freight, so sort of the digitalisation of freight solutions to mirror the customer side of things.
Yes, I definitely think so, and I think what's holding it back is why also the quote was here. It's because the expectation from the businesses is just not there yet. But we're definitely going that direction, and
building these solutions one on one.
And how do you see that, Angus, from a regulatory perspective? As we see shipping companies, logistics firms, as we see e-certificates even become more of a norm, how is that going to impact the role of the regulators? You're a principal surveyor. How will the surveying role evolve in the future?
The surveying role on board ships, I can't see it changing a great deal because we have these certificates. Obviously our surveying functions, the process of undertaking a survey on board ships is developing. Still the vast majority of surveyors walk around with a piece of paper, and that's very handy on a tanker when you've got flammable goods. However, any vessel where it's possible to go on the deck with something electronic, certainly our surveyors are now walking around with one of these, and it's much more efficient. It means that reporting can be much quicker. Basically, when the surveyor gets back to the hotel, it's often a matter of 20 minutes, and then he can submit the report to the office, it gets approved, it gets sent out to the ship owner, often within 24 hours of leaving the vessel. So, yeah, certainly electronic and the way we do things is changing rapidly, and we continue to invest in that.
And how much, you effectively define yourself as a digital ship manager, but Jan, from BSM's perspective, when would you say you could talk about Bernard Schulte being a digital ship manager?
I mean, I think you have heard from my colleague Götz this morning about our software platform, which I believe is one of the most integrated ship management platforms in our industry. So in that respect, we are actually quite far advanced on that, and we have all these client web access features and interact with our clients in a digital way. There's no doubt about that. So I would say we are actually quite advanced on that.
Does anybody have any questions as we come to a close, or are you all in want of a beer? Yes?
I have one question for Patrick. You mentioned that some of the equipment manufacturers that they want to charge for the data they're producing. So I have not heard about this. And my question is, are you talking about then the main engine manufacturers? And if so, if it's all brands like Wärtsilä, MAN, or are we talking about some specific brands?
I think it was on an Inmarsat convention in Hamburg where a guy from, I think it was Caterpillar, said they are happy to provide us with the data which the machine is spitting out every split second when they install an industrial PC where the data will be upgraded most probably from bits and bytes into an Excel spreadsheet, and then we can buy it from them. So the problem is to have the interface into the alarm and monitoring system, which would be fair enough everything you would need to see all the operational data, power available, power recommended or needed to run the show, and also the main parameters, exhaust temperatures, all these kind of stuff. We could just pull it out and analyze it, and then we are there where we want to be.
I must admit, I've spoken to Wärtsilä in the past about data. This was about 3 years ago. And the CEO, now CEO, said, no, the data from our engines is the property of the ship owner. Now, whether that's the property of the ship manager, however, it depends on the relationship between the ship owner and the ship manager. They are different.
Owner is very happy to allow us to receive the data and also to report on this. It's not a problem at all. But I'm sure that the CEO has a different perspective than the service guys which are running around, because still the vessel has been built by a contract from a shipyard, and all the equipment have been delivered to the shipyard, which was the first contractor. So in the end, sometimes the makers don't even have access to the alarm and monitoring systems. They can't choose. They just deliver the data to that, and then we would need to talk to Kongsberg, Interschalt, not MAN or Wärtsilä, and these two also need to agree how the data would be supplied to us then to analyze it. So it's a bit more complicated. And if you talk to the normal salespeople, they want to make a business case.
Well, I know a lot of the OEMs, they've gone down the service route with their business. That's a significant revenue stream for them there, because they see that the actual manufacture and sale of main engines is not, doesn't have a sort of a sustainable future for them. So they've gone down the route of offering service agreements with
sort of
networks.
after sales service.
So that's something that we're going to see more and more, I guess, isn't it? Yeah. Do you see yourselves with what you're offering to your clients, though? Is that something? How do you take that kind of data and move it on to your clients?
I must say, I think we are at the very beginning of digitalization on ships. Still, we have a lot of ships where data is being collected manually on board by simple manual readings, and they are doing their routine rounds on board the ship to collect all the data. And when it comes to data quality, that is a real nightmare. And the way we have to go is we have to come to solutions where the data on board is generated automatically by sensors, by flow-meters. There we are, I think, at the very beginning, because there's always a price tag attached to that, and that is.
But there are also companies selling performance services.
Yes.
On top of that, so they take in the data into their box and spit out through an algorithm a suggestion about how you can increase and improve the performance. But that's within the performance companies. We've seen a lot of acquisitions, even one company going broke. So there's a lot of competition within that. There's a lot of evolution within that as a service model. Yes. So anybody else got any questions? Yes, at the back, and then.
Well, Paul's mentioned during his presentation the approach of Agile to, let's say, project management, and he mentioned that startups live from the approach to try and error, so try something out very quickly and receive feedback from the market, and that is something that worked out pretty well in the B2C industry. Now my question is to all panelists is that whether in shipping and maybe ship management companies in particular, they still struggle with that idea to try out things that are not perfect yet, and maybe by that, in some cases, prevent quick development in technology.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I started my own company. So it is very difficult to go to old-fashioned, very conservative company and go forward. You have an IT department which is sitting there and protecting their bits and pieces. So to go this step forward is really, really difficult, and that's why I decided just to do it outside.
So there's a lack of actually.
If I can comment a little bit on this as well. I'm always impressed by the fact that we're trying to solve the problem completely even before having started. So to the question of having captors on board to be able to have clean data and so forth. Imagine that you need to be able to buy a lot of different boxes and different captors and put it all and merge it into one system and so forth. We've played around a little bit with a box that has a little Raspberry Pi on it and some accelerometers that you have in your cell phone. A box that costs nothing to build, and we've put it on top of on board of a ship. And what you get out of it is so much data that then you can reverse engineer and clean up and so forth. And it's a solution that's very cheap, that solves a few different problems, and that doesn't have to be complete. So there's this approach of being able to experiment, do the trial and error, think about solutions that are very cheap and solve a few problems, rather than trying to solve the whole.
So your fear there is that sometimes we over-engineer
completely.
the approach to that.
And by doing so, you've learned so much, so at the end of your iteration, you're ready to continue.
I must say, sounds great.
Yeah.
But honestly, I have a problem with not fully functional software, in particular on board ships, because you need the acceptance of the people on board the ship.
Sure.
And you gain that only when you come along with a more or less perfect product. And if you don't have that, you don't get the acceptance, and then you can basically scrap the project from the very beginning.
So, or you do it as a joint partnership. In that case, the guys were on board from the company, and they actually work with it.
So you've got to get everybody engaged, willing to be part of that.
Everyone around the table. And it's their project.
Are you doing that within the FDS?
Yeah, exactly. The current project I'm working on, we've taken exactly that approach, where we're saying we don't want a perfect product, but we've taken people on board, and they know the journey that we're going through, and we're saying, you know, show them the picture with the skateboard. This is a very famous minimal viable product picture, where, you know, we take the step by step, and we're not going to be perfect on day one. And I think because we involve people into the development from the day one, and we focus it around one office, they accepted this and have accepted this, that there will be errors in the system that we will weed out along the way. And then at the same time, you also build ownership in the business. They feel like, oh, they've been part of building this, and suddenly they're more proud of this. Like, wait, this is theirs. This is not something that coming from you know, a central department somewhere. This is something we built jointly.
Good. Can we go over to the Slido, please? Just go to the end here. It'll take a second to kick in. I just wanted, just following up on that, somebody put through here 3 rules that Pierre was mentioning. A practical example: every Thursday at 4 o'clock, we close down business for an hour and host a celebratory failure of the week. Above is for whether there was for twill or from twill. But the other question there: do we need to look more closely at training and qualifications of crew and shore-based staff to more effectively deal with digitalisation? I mean, that's not a regulatory question that I could ask Angus really, but from the other 4 of you perhaps, you know, do we need to look at the training angle, or is there a training angle that we could look at? Because there's a lot of focus these days on STCW. Is there an element of STCW that we could look at when it comes to this transformation, this change? Is it time? I know there has just been a fairly recent and long worked at update on STCW, but do we need to really look at STCW perhaps?
STCW obviously contains a great deal about training. STCW is a large document, a large convention, and there are a number of very large conventions that apply to shipping. And more are coming all the time. Shipping is, to my mind, one of the more heavily regulated industries in the world. So to add yet more when it isn't necessarily essential is perhaps not, to my mind.
So STSW doesn't need necessarily
training.
Yeah.
A recent addition to the training required in STCW is ECDIS. If you have ECDIS on board, there's 2 different types of training that go with that. And the initial requirements for training under ECDIS were a 2-step process. This has been changed slightly such that the second step is much more easy and can be done on board. This was in response to industry finding it the real pain to implement and very, very expensive to implement. This is a case where STCW and certainly global shipping authorities, governments actually listen to industry, which is always nice, always a good idea. So in this instance, in terms of operation of digital systems, etc., what regulators want to see, certainly what surveyors want to see, is a ship where things are working satisfactorily. It's the physical condition of the ship, the capability of the guys that we're most interested in. And in terms of their training on that particular set of software, I think we prefer to step back fractionally from that.
But as long as there is, whatever happens in the evolution of the industry, as long as it maintains that there is a safety mandate within that, which is what all the regulations, safety of humans, safety of the environment. Yes. But in terms, going back again to this question here, looking closely at training qualifications of crew and shore-based staff here. So shore-based staff obviously is not what the IMO deals with, to effectively deal with digitalisation. Maybe in-house training, in DFDS perhaps.
So, from my point of view, I think training can take us somewhere, the normal formal training programs we have and so on. But what is more important is, again, including people into projects where we are trying some things out. Let's do smaller digital projects, innovative projects, and thereby giving people training. As we talked about in the roundtable before, it's also important to give people the time to do this. So give people the time to build new things, not just to run the business as they do every day, but give them time for development, for creating new ideas, for doing that, and thereby you will get the training of staff that you need.
Okay. Now, one of the poll questions that I asked was, what is your opinion of startups in the maritime and shipping industry? The larger percentage said crucial part of the transformation landscape, so that's good for you. And then, oops, I've lost it. And then a few saying that they are useful, maybe they need more support from within the industry to actually evolve and grow. And you describe yourself as a startup, perhaps startup ship management company.
Correct.
Do you feel that you are supported in where you're trying to go with this company?
Not really.
No. What kind of support do you think that you would need to make your business a success?
Hard to say. Actually, we are running it quite fine. And of course, we have also already attracted some attention, and there's queuing up some partners or some investors, but I want to keep the spirit to develop it a bit more further, to keep it, to reduce the complexity, because when you get externals which are very complex, it is really, really difficult to stay with your simplicity.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be win-win for both, right? For this to work, you have to be solving the problem of a corporate or somebody that has funding, branding, and so forth. It needs to be real pain point, and you're bringing real new solutions that people could have not found by themselves or within the scope of their thinking. And for the startups, they have to be within the environment, completely secluded, and continue doing what they do best. So, it has to be a win-win. If not, the partnership doesn't.
Yeah, and from Bernard Schultz's perspective, when you're looking at a startup or somebody that's got an innovative idea, do you look at it from your own perspective, or do you always look at it from your customers, the ship owners' perspective, and say, okay, how can I pass that further up the chain?
We in the past we have looked at various startups, more on the supplier side than in the ship management area. And we look at them or questioning how they could contribute to our business model, how they could contribute to the production of ship management services ultimately.
I'm going to end it here and just go on to a very final last session. So can I say thank you to the five of you and just ask you to take a seat again, please. So just before we come to a close today, and I let you loose to go and drink beer and wine and whatever it is that you want to do, I've just got another poll question that I want to do. Just to remind you that all of the poll questions are going to be available for you to download on our website, and we'll send you the link to be able to do that in due course. But one of the other questions I did ask there was relating to GDPR. And a larger percentage thought that GDPR is a challenge that many do not yet understand. So, what I wanted to also know, I want to know what your main takeaway from today's event is. So just one last thing for you to do today with your mobile phones before you turn them off of silent. I'd just like to, what one main takeaway, I said this morning that one of the things I wanted you to be able to do was to hopefully take something away from today, back to the office when you go and talk to your colleagues tomorrow. So what is the main takeaway? And I want you to think about what your main takeaway is from today that you can give to your colleagues tomorrow. And don't say the beer, please. It's also helpful for me to know where the industry is looking at its efforts, where it's putting its thoughts, because we put these events together and we try and bring in the conversations so that you can hear and talk a lot about what you think. And that's why we use Slido, why we try and get the discussions, etc., and even why we do some of the webinars online that we're doing in our virtual environment. So as you'll see when you get the password, there's a lot more that we're going to be doing here. But it's important from my perspective that we get a bit of feedback about what it is that you can learn from an event like this. So with that, and as you go answering that question, oops, sorry. Can I say thank you to you all, thank you to the speakers, thank you for coming here, thank you to the Isle of Man for their support of this event, and for the beer, you go out the door, you turn right again, you go in the main entrance, you go up a stair, and there's the beer. or alternatively you follow me. Thank you. And don't forget your digital detox tea. why it's not here. You have to go from outside, turn right again, and up the stairs.
Thank you.
Yeah.